Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam pasu taranga bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Niramadhanado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Shiradikama Gavayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Gavayarapara Madhura Pratikchanasva Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Ne kunjayono Ratikeli siddhai Jajali virjukti Apekshaniya Nekundayono Ratikeli siddhai Jajali virjukti Tatratidakya Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam. Sajjad bharitena shamastashrashri uktas tathava gataiva sadhuvi sakya bharitena. Kintu prabhoja priya eva tasya vande guru shri charanaravrindam. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado. Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Yasya prasada. Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Jayam tuvam tasya yasastrin sandhyam vande guru shri charanaravrindam. Jayam tuvam tasya yasastrin sandhyam vande guru shri. Jayam stuvam tasya yasastrin sandhyam vande guru shri charanaravrindam. Jayam stuvam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatabine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatabine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Radha Damodar ki.
No, stand is okay. नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् यशोदाभियोलुकलाघवमानम् परामृष्टमत्यन्तद्रोदुप्यगोप्या रुदन्तं मुहुर्नेत्रं युग्मं मृजन्तं कराम्बोजयुग्मेन सातङ्कनेत्रम् मुहुश्वासकं पात्रीरेकाङ्ककान्ता स्थितग्रैवं दामोदरं भक्तिबद्धम् इति दृश्यलीलाभिरानन्दकुन्दे स्वघोषं निमज्जन्तम् आख्यापयन्तम् दृश्यलीलाभिरानन्दकुन्दे स्वघोषं निमज्जन्तम् आख्यापयन्तम् तदीयेषिताग्नेषु भक्तैर्जितत्वम् पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्ति वन्दे पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्ति वन्दे वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षावधिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरेशादपीह इदन्तेव पूर्णाद गोपालबालं सदा मे मनस्या वीराष्ट्रं किमन्ये इदन्ते मुकाम्बोजम् अत्यन्तनीलै घृतं कुन्तलैस्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्या घृतं कुन्तलैस्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्या मुहुश्चुम्बितं बिम्बरक्तादरं मे मनस्या विराष्ट्रं मलं लक्ष्यलभ्ये नमो देव दामोदरनन्त विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालब्धिमग्नम् प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालब्धिमग्नम् कृपादृष्टिविश्याति दिनं बतानो ग्रहाणि समामग्नं ये दक्षिदृश्या कुबेरात्मजौ बद्धमुक्तैव यात्वा त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभाजकृतौ च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकाम्य प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे गृहो मेऽस्ति दामोदरेह नमस्तेस्तु दाम्ने स्फुरादितिदाम्ने त्वदीयोदरायात विश्वस्य दाम्ने त्वदीयोदरायात विश्वस्य दाम्ने नमो राधिकायाय त्वदीयप्रियायाय नमो अनन्तलीलाय देवाय तुभ्यम् नमो राधिकायाय त्वदीयप्रियायाय नमो अनन्तलीलाय देवाय तुभ्यम् हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
जय राधा नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव राधे जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रव्राजकाचार्य स्तुत्तर सरशिष्य महारिष्कन प्रतिष्ठा विविधिस्ताम सकाचार्य वैष्णव श्रमणि गौर प्रिय जन कृष्ण प्रेम भक्ति दत्त पतित पावन डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज शील प्रभुपाद जी की जय श्री गौर्य गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुण सतगोस्वामी प्रभु की नामाचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्रद्धित गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावन अवतार की जय गोल की प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय बृहत्तंग 29 बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गुप्तना राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रजभूम वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय देलोशिव श्री श्री राधा नील माधव की जय श्री माय पुण्यवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम कित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय बोलो श्री मथुरा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय श्री यशोद दामोदारी जी की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to the Son of the all glories to the Son of the all glories to the Son of the all glories, glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narasimha
Praladaladarayine Hiranyakashipurakshah Shilatangkanakhalaya Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yato yato yami tato Narsimha Bahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha Bahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha नरसिंहम् आदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये नरसिंहादिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरे नखाम् अद्भुतशृङ्गम् दलिता हिरण्यकशिपो तनुभृङ्गम् केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव जय नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद विनाश नृसिंहदेव भगवान की भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की शिल प्रभुपाद की गौर प्रेमानंद
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sattvatai Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki I was looking for you, I couldn't find you.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Priyasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pao Ei Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava
Radha Krishna Seva Pao Ei Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava
Chetamara Sharanalo Tara Vancha Purna Ho
Tumara Sharanana Taramancha Puna
Kripa Kore Koro Tare Vrindavan Vasi
Tumi Kripa Kare Karatare
Mora Eya Vilas Kunja Diyova Nayane Hari Bo Sada Yugal Ruparasi
Aminayane
Ei Nivedan Dharo Sakhiranu Gata Koro
Nivedana Dhara Sakiranu Gata Koro
Sevadikara Diye Koro Nij Dasi
Sevayadi Koro Diye Koro Nidasi
Dina Krishna Dase Koe Ei Dina Mora Hoe
Krishna Das Kore Namara
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Bhasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi
Jani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tanigani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sappa Kani Brahma Kani Kani Sa Kani Kani Palla Santi Pradakina Pade Pade
Jani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tanigani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sappa Kani Brahma Kani Kani Sa Kani Kani Palla Santi Pradakina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tanigani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sappa Kani Brahma Kani Kani Sa Kani Kani Palla Santi Pradakina Pade
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी,
जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी,
जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी,
जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी,
जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय वृंदा देवी, 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद, जय जय गुरुदेव, 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 जय जय गुरुदेव, श्रीमती वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की
जय। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्राणे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्राणे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्राणे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की। Beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you, his wish is fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make me resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg to make me a follower of Kavitamas of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen, lowly servant of Krishna praise, may I always feel me love Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Chaito Datpanamarjanam Bhava Madhavagni Nivapanam Shreyakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavati Daivamidrishamya Janinanuragaha Dinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kitanya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagarishakamaye Mama Janmane Janmaneshwari Bhavatar Bhaktira Itukitwai Ainandatanuja Kinkaram Paritamam Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tavapada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Padanam Gadagadharudaya Gira Gulakarinchitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakyusha Prabhusaitam Sunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virayena Aslishava Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshanar Marmatam Karotuva Jatatatava Vidadhatu Panpandu Matpranatastu Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam Ki Jai Namo Varanayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurati Shri Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunnavadi Pachatyari Shatarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to freely taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus we have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules to chant in these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord on stony street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some rather I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your Lord's feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he showed men so. If he sunders me rightfully by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam Ki Jai Ho. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as worship activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fearless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they can and they're full of compassion with the following conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubhyevacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Kochi Vaishnavrindi ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranam Mangala Charan ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakchurmilitam Jena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jyotaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatavintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padayo Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Saminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshastum Navari Patsatyari Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shiva Shabana Videvi Deitaya Kripabdvaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjo Jala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shri Murthaye Rinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pusidanta Dvantaharine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchave Ragyamurtaye Vipralambhara Sambhude Parambhujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumitsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarva Bhuma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauritvishe Namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Jayatam Suratupango Mama Manda Matir Gatir Masarvasya Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmarada Shila Govinda Devo Prishtalibi Shivamanu Shmarami Shmara Sarasarambi Bamshvata Tatastita Karshan Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishari Vrusabhano Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shvasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranam ki Jai. Shri Brahma Sangita ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchit Ananda Vigraha Anadi Radhir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Viksha Lakshya Videsha Shuravi Ravi Palayantam Lakshmi Sahasha Satasam Brahma Sevamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Vajami Kalatacham Varam Vadasamasitam Buddha Sundaram Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajamin Alola Chandra Kalasar Vanamalya Bamsi Rannangadam Pranaya Keli Kala Vilasam Syamam Tribhanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasham Govindamari Purusham Bhajamin Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiranjaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujala Vigrasya Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajamin Advitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navajovanam Cham Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Adma Bhakto Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajamin Pantastu Koti Sarvasala Sampragamyo Vayuratapi Manaso Muni Pungavanam Sopyasti Yat Prapada Simnya Vichintya Tatte Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajamin Ekwapya Sora Jajitum Jagananda Kotim Yashakti Rasi Jagananda Chaya Jadantam Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajamin Jat Bhava Bhavita Dhiyo Manujastateva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha Shukte Yameva Nigama Prasate Stuvanti Govindamari Purusham Tamam Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratipavitabis Tabiya Eva Nija Rupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasakilatma Bhutto Govindamari Purusham Tamam Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Shantha Sadeva Yudeshu Vilokayantim Jamsyam Sundaram Achinta Guna Swarupam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Moti Shukalani Yamena Tistan Nana Vatara Makarot Bhuvanishu Kintu Krishna Swayam Sambhavavat Paramam Pumanyo Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasha Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Koti Asvashesha Vasudari Vibhuti Vinam Tat Brahma Nishkalamanantam Ashesha Bhutam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasha Jagananda Sadana Sute Treguna Tarvishaya Veda Vitayamana Sarva Valambi Parasatvam Visutta Sarvam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasaptamaya Manashu Yarpraninam Pratipalan Smamte Gupetya Lila Itena Bhuvanani Jajastram Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajami Golo Ganamni Nijadam Nitale Satasya Devi Mahesha Haridama Shuteshu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vihita Chayena Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajami Shriti Shriti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reka Chayena Yasha Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichhanu Rupama Piyasha Shastatesa Govindamari Purusham
Tamaham Bhajami
Kiram Yatada Divikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Yatatata Pratakastietu Yasambutamapi Tata Samupeti Karyat Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajami Depashi Eva Isha Santaramamupetya Dipayate Vivritaitu Samana Dharma Yastati Eva Isha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindamari Purusham Tama Bhajami Yakarna Nana Vajale Vajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saruma Kupa Adara Shaktima Balambya Param Samurti Govindamari Purusham
Tamaham Bhajami Yasyai
Vishasita Kalata Balambya Jivanta Vilaja Jagananda Nata Vishnu Mandya Iya Shakalaviseshu Govindamari Purusham
Tamaham Bhajami
Basmatya Tasma Sakaleshi
Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitat Patatra Brahmaya Esha Jagananda Vidana Karta Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Pala Vigam Vinidai Kumbha Dvinda Masmaya Sundati Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Agir Mahika Ganama Bhumuruti Sasya Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagalagrana Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesha Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Diyasta Jivaha Yadata Matari Bhava Prakatapa Bhava Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Dashtra Omindra Husa Karma Bandha Pradhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidhati Tinchulu Bhakti Bhagajam Bhagavindamadi Purisham Tamahamjam Krodha Kama Saja Pranayadi Biti Vatsaya Moha Guru Gaurav Sevi Bhava Sanchinti Tasya Sadvisam Tanamapareti Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarava Druma Bhumishchintamani Ganama Itu Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Shiranandam Jyoti Parama Pitada Swadhyam Apichasa Yatra Shiradi Vijavadi Suravi Vyasta Suman Nimesa Dakya Vavajistina Ritsamaya Vajay Svitad Vikram Tamaham Il Gohulakam Ityam Vidanta Station Takshti Viracha Katipya Shikuru Vastika prayers Kijay. Spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Are from my respectful base not the lotus read as such spiritual master. Chanting a holy name, dancing next to singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the malice of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands up, then he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Are from my respectful base not the lotus read as such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishi Radha and Krishna. He also engages the disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes in the morning, clean their temple, and perform other solemn worship of the Lord. Are from my respectful basis not the lotus read as such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna four kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied reading Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. Are from my respectful basis not the lotus read as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes, erotic and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms of spiritual master. These at every moment are my respectful basis of the lotus read as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he's expert at assisting the gopis who at different times made different tests and arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal love from the groves of Vrindavan. Therefore, on the most humble basis of the lotus read as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is beyond as much the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful basis of the lotus read as such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember to praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful basis of the lotus read of my spiritual master, His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shrimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, text number 7 again. Savai Vishwa Srijam Garbo Deva Karnatma Saktimam Vibhava Jatman Atmanam Ekada Dasada Trida Sa, that, Vi, certainly, Visvasrijam, of the gigantic Virat form, Garbha, total energy, Deva, living energy, Karma, activity of life, Atma, self, Saktimam, full with potencies, Vibhabhaja, divided, Atmana, by himself, Atmanam, himself, Ekada, in oneness, Dasada, in 10, Trida, and in 3. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity, and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Consciousness is the sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in the form of consciousness called Jnana Shakti. The total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. The activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions, the airs of life are called prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana, and are also differently qualified as naga, kurma, krikara, devadatta, and dhananjaya. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in Bhagavad Gita 2.41 as bahusaka hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayanam. The conditioned soul is bewildered into various activities for want of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. The monist believes that there is only one consciousness, whereas the sattvatas, or devotees, believe that although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, they are one because there is agreement. The individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharma prityaja mamekam saranam braja. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness and thus maintain his conscious purity. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the supreme. This consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity: adhyatmika, or self-identification with the body and mind; adhibodhika, or self-identification with the material products; and adhidaivika, or self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the three, adhidaivika, self-identification, is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. So today I want to concentrate on one point that we discussed somewhat yesterday and other days, but I want to really focus on it, and that is the last couple sentences of this purport, which says, this consciousness is divided into 3 modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Now, this is a very profound statement, and it's difficult for us to capture what the enormity of this statement, because it's simple English. If it was complicated English, we might pay more attention to it. But because it's such simple English, it just whizzes right past it. It goes right past us. You know. He's saying here, this consciousness is divided into 3 modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Well, that's the whole point. In the material world, as it says in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, let me get the exact verse. The 7th chapter, verse number 27. Ichadvesa samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarvabhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa. O scion of Bharata, he's referring to Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, well, that's also Arjuna, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So everybody, as soon as they're born in a material body, they are born into delusion. Now, what is delusion? There's illusion and delusion. There's a difference in meaning of both of those words. illusion means that after making a mistake, if you believe the mistake is true, that's called an illusion. Right? Like, for example, you make a mistake. I don't have a soul, I just have a body. Okay, that's a mistake, right? Why do you make mistakes? Because you don't hear properly or you don't see properly. Right? So I don't see a soul, so I think I'm only the body. Right? So I made a mistake. Now, when you believe the mistake is true, that's an illusion. And when you act on it, that's called a delusion. So you can believe things that are not true. But as long as you don't act on it, you're just in a state of illusion. But if you act on it, then you're delusional. What would be an example of this? So I say, I don't have a soul because I can't see it. So I'm just this body. That's who I am. And then you say, if I'm only this body, then I should only be concerned with pleasing this body. So now you start to act to please the body. You buy supplements. You buy special types of shoes and dress, and you eat anything like the Chinese. They say, "Oh, I eat only what move," which means I only eat things that move, right? In Chinese English. So these type of ideas are are false ideas. That I'm only the body, therefore I should just pander to any whim I have about this body. So when you start pandering to them, to those whims, you begin to act in very strange ways. You buy different things for the satisfaction of the body. There's like a million different things like that. So at that point, you're acting in a state of delusion, or you're delusional, right? And then the delusion gets worse and worse, right? So somebody says, well, yeah, I'm this body, but this is, like, for example, one time there was a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim. They were waiting in a dentist's waiting room to get treated. So when the Jew went in, the dentist said, "Open your mouth." Ah, he opened his mouth, and he started looking in the mouth. And then the dentist said, "The doctor, you're going to understand." So he took out whatever instrument he had in the guy's mouth so he could speak properly. And he said, "Doctor, I want you to understand something." He said, "What's that?" He said, you just saw a cavity, right?" He said, "Yes." He said, "You have to understand something about the cavity." He said, "What is that?" He said, "This is a Jewish cavity. Do you understand?" The doctor said, I don't quite understand." No. This is a Jewish cavity. Do you understand?" "Yeah, okay, I understand. Now can I continue?" He said, "Yes." So after he left, then the Christian came in, and the doctor said, "Open your mouth." Ah, he opened his mouth, and he stuck something in his mouth. I said, "I'm going to tell you." Okay, he took this thing out. I said, "What is it you want to tell me?" He said, "You got to understand something, Doc. If you saw some cavity, it's actually a Christian cavity. Do you understand?" He said, "I'm beginning to understand this. Yeah, okay, I understand." He said, "Can I continue?" He said, "Okay, go ahead." So then, after he was finished, the Muslim came in, right? And the doc said, "Okay, open your mouth." Blah. He opened his mouth, and then he stuck something in the mouth. And he said, "Okay, wait a minute, I'll take the thing out. All right, what is it you want to tell me? Don't let me guess." He said, how can you guess?" "No, I got some experience in it. You're going to tell me that the cavity is a Muslim cavity, is that right?" He said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He said, "I'm learning things today. Can I continue now?" So you see, this idea that it's a Jewish cavity or a Christian cavity or a Muslim cavity. This is all nonsense, right? And the doctor afterwards, he was just thinking about it, and he's thinking to himself that, this is complete nonsense. These people, they don't know what you're talking about. A cavity is cavity. There's no such Jewish cavity or Christian cavity or Muslim cavity, right? So this is acting in a state of delusion, right? It's delusional. And people have a little bit of sense. They can see through it right away. But most people don't have that sense. They get fooled by these false concepts. So therefore, this verse says everybody is born into delusion, bewildered. That means they already made mistakes in their previous life. They already believed the mistakes were true, and they've always acted as if they're true, right? So when they're born, they come with this baggage, right? That's a statement in English. It means you come with all these false concepts and all the types of sinful activities you committed based on the false concepts. You're coming with that whole baggage, right? Every one of us, when we're born, we come with that baggage. And we're bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. Now, this is a fundamental big statement. Dualities arisen from desire and hate. So we all have desires, right? Mm-hmm. But when our desires are frustrated by someone, we begin to hate, right? Now, the purport prophet says, the real constitutional position of a living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. Now, this is called a metaphor as opposed to a simile. A metaphor means you express something basically in a different way using analogous type of equivalency, not comparison, equivalency. So when you say that the Supreme Lord is pure knowledge, that means that he possesses this thing, which is the way you identify him, right? Or something has a certain quality that's expressed in a different way than you would normally express it, right? So it says that the subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, which means you're separated from the Lord because it's synonymous, right? He becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, see, the Prabhupada is like brilliant. Like in 2 sentences, he says something you could write books and books about, right? It's just amazing how pregnant his simple language is with deeper and deeper meanings, right? So when one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let's say a lamb or a sheep, right, or sheep are what? Separated from the flock, right? So what would happen? They'd be attacked by some animal, like a lion or a tiger or a cheetah or a fox or hyenas. Yeah. They would get attacked, or a crocodile, they would get attacked and eaten, right? In the same way, when one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, which means Krishna, right, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, yeah, if some alligator bites your leg, you're going to be controlled, right? And you're not going to be safe anymore. And you're not going to be thinking about God. You'll be thinking about, how am I going to get away from this alligator, right? So we see the illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. So now, Prabhupada is explaining where the genesis of all this illusion and hatred and violence and all these things are coming. It begins with a false desire. Where did the false desire come from? False ego. Where did the false ego come from? It comes from but separating ourselves from Krishna, right? And then we develop this false ego that I'm independent, that I can figure things out on my own. I don't need anybody to help me, right? I don't need a spiritual master. And so there's this famous statement in English. It says, "No God, no master." Which means I don't believe in God, and I don't believe in a spiritual master or some pundit or anything like that. You know, I'm completely independent. So this is like, you know, the criterion for being an idiot throughout your whole lifetime, when you deny God or a spiritual master, and you say, I'll figure everything out on my own. So one time this guy called me up. He was an Armenian guy, and he read my Armenian blog, in which I said that this legend in Armenia is that there were some great masters in the past, and they wrote a book called 6,000 Years of Wisdom. And they kept this book a secret, and it was only given to very select people, very few select Armenians throughout history. So I claimed that I had this book, and then I explained what was in it. You know, basically I explained the 10 subjects of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And so I got a phone call from the guy who read my blog, you know, and they said, it's very interesting what you wrote. I said, yeah. I said, yeah, you should take it seriously. He said, well, you know, I told him, I said, but you need a spiritual master. He said, oh, no, I don't need a spiritual master. I said, you don't? No, I want to figure it out on my own. So I said, you can't figure it out on your own. You'll make too many mistakes. No, I don't believe that, you know, and then he hung up on me. Right? So you see, that false ego is so strong, you know, when they hear something that is the truth, they reject it. They don't accept it. Just like we can try and convince someone to stop eating meat. They'll argue with you and say, I'm not going to stop eating meat. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, people have been eating meat in my family for generations. Why should I stop eating meat? You know? So you come face to face with a delusional person, and it's very hard to convince them. You know, but Krishna will convince them through the laws of karma, right? So the more they're delusional, the more they're going to suffer. And eventually, you know, if they wake up and they say, well, why am I suffering? I got to find out why I'm suffering, you know. And then they'll try and go to different people. Like a friend of mine, a cousin of mine, his name was John. I hadn't seen John for like 40 years, right, or heard from him. He hadn't heard from me, I hadn't heard from him. One day, he calls me up out of the blue and said, Harry, he said, I need your help. I said, John, we haven't talked for 40 years. What do you want? What kind of help? Well, he said, I know that you're the only person who can help me. I said, John, what are you talking about? We haven't talked for 40 years. You call me up and you say you need some help. I'm the only person who can help. He said, yeah. He said, let me explain this to you. He said, you know, I'm a bipolar guy, right? I divorced my wife, and but then I found this other girl. She lives in Iceland, and she was also bipolar, and we connected with each other, and we got married. I said, okay, John, what does this have to do with helping you? He said, no, wait a minute. He said, don't be in a rush. I can explain this to you. He said, So my wife and I were really completely compatible because we had the same problem. Right? And he said, but after some years, he said, she became so bipolar that it disturbed me. So he said, now he wasn't joking now he got real serious. So he said, I kicked her out. I said, I kicked her out. I said, I couldn't stand it anymore. I said, well, I said, John, that's not so good. He said, no, wait a minute. I'm not finished, he said. So then she committed suicide. I said, wow, that's heavy duty. He said, yeah, it is. I said, so what's the problem, John? He said, the problem is she's haunted me. I see her, I hear her all the time. I said, really? Okay, John, what's your problem? I said, why are you calling me up? He said, you're the only person that I'm sure can help me. Because I went to see different Christians, ministers, the Armenian minister, and then I went to see some Protestant minister. I went to see the Catholic Church. I went to see the Pentecostals. I went to see. They're all a bunch of crazy people. I'm telling you, Harry. I know now for sure. They don't know diddly crap. I said, well, John, that doesn't sound so good. So what else? So then I went to some Jewish people, and then I went to some Muslim people. I said, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I said, okay, John, how do you know? I know what the right thing is. So I know you, Harry. I know you know the truth. I said, John, we haven't been together for 40 years. How do you know this? Well, I looked you up. Okay. So he said, can you help me? I said, yeah, I can help you. But I don't know if you're going to do what I'm going to tell you to do. He said, I'm so desperate, I'll do anything. I said, okay, well, the first thing is, John, you got to believe in God. I said, what? I don't believe in God. I said, John, okay, I just told you you're not going to follow what I'm going to tell you. He said, no, keep talking. So, so I told him, I said, look, you're going to have to cook some vegetarian food. He said, I'm not a vegetarian. I said, I know it, John, but can you listen and learn something? You have to cook some vegetarian food, and you have to learn how to offer it to God. And if you offer it sincerely, then he'll offer it back to you as his mercy. And then you have to offer it to your dead girlfriend. He said, well, how can I offer it to her? She's dead. I said, I know, John, but she's not dead. She has an eternal soul. He said, I don't believe in that crap. I said, look, then why'd you call me up then? I said, okay. But how do I do this? I said, you have to go on a webpage called International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or Hare Krishna Movement, and look up how to offer food to Krishna. He said, who's Krishna? I said, it's the name of God, John. So I had to explain everything to him. So he finally did it. He looked it up, he learned the prayers, and he offered it. So 1 month later, he called me up and said, Harry, he said, I'm getting to be a good cook now. I said, really, John? He said, yeah, and I offer it to your God, and then I say all those prayers, and then I wait a little bit, and then, like you said, and I even chanted your mantra, Hare Krishna. I said, really? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. And then afterwards, I ate it, and it was good because I was getting to be a good cook, And I said, okay, but what about the problems? So that problem went away after a month. She said, she's left. I'm free now. I said, oh, that's good, John. I'm glad to hear that. I said, are you going to continue doing it? No, hell no, man. I'm not going to waste my time doing this anymore. I got what I want. So, this is the sad state of people, right? But this is a true story. This actually happened, And he never called me after that. I invited him to come. I said, you come and stay with me, John, a week or two or a month, and I'll teach you some more things. He said, okay, I'll think about it, but that was it. He never called me back. So these are, the problem with these people is that they're so addicted to sense gratification except when they get in trouble, and then they want to find out why and how to get out of it, you know. But as soon as they get out of it, they revert back. You know, huh?
Back to square one.
Back to square one. Yeah, and it's a shame because he could have made a lot of spiritual advancement if he stuck to it. So these are decisions that we have to make. But because there is so much desire and eventually hate, because whenever our desires are frustrated, we begin to hate the people that frustrate them. Right? That's why a devotee has to be equiposed. And this is explained in the 18th chapter very nicely by Krishna to Arjuna, where he says, prescribed, this is 18th chapter, verse number 7, after explaining to Arjuna that one should never give up, one should give up activities for sense gratification, but one should never give up activities of Krishna consciousness, but one should perform those Krishna consciousness activities without attachment to the result, and one should act as a matter of duty. Now, text number 7, 18.7, he says, prescribed duties should never be renounced. If one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. And the purport, Prabhupada says, work for material satisfaction must be given up. But activities which promote one to spiritual activity, like cooking for the Supreme Lord and offering the food to the Lord and then accepting the food, are recommended. It is said that a person in a renounced order of life should not cook for himself. Cooking for oneself is prohibited, but cooking for the Supreme Lord is not prohibited. Similarly, a sannyasi may perform a marriage ceremony to help his disciple in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. If one renounces such activities, it is to be understood that he's acting in the mode of darkness. Then the next verse goes on. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. Purport: one who is in Krishna consciousness should not give up earning money out of fear that he is performing fruitive activities. If by working one can engage his money in Krishna consciousness, or if by rising early in the morning one can advance his transcendental Krishna consciousness, one should not desist out of fear or because such activities are considered troublesome. Such renunciation is in the mode of passion. The result of passionate work is always miserable. If a person renounces work in that spirit, he never gets the result of renunciation. And then text 9 says, O Arjuna, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done, and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Wow. Big statement here. And purport: prescribed duties must be performed with this mentality. One should act without attachment for the result. He should be disassociated from the modes of work. A man working in Krishna consciousness in a factory does not associate himself with the work of the factory, nor with the workers of the factory. He simply works for Krishna. And when he gives up the result for Krishna, he is acting transcendentally. Whoa. And then before that, Prabhupada said, wait a minute. He says that there are many grihastas in Krishna consciousness.
Which was it? Fifth.
that are working in factories, but they give all their result to Krishna. Therefore, they're actually sannyasis. Sannyasi is not the dress.
Which verse, Maharaj?
Huh?
Which verse?
1 second, I'm going to find it. It's the 18th chapter.
Factories.
Oh, yeah, where is it? Number 11? Okay. Yeah, it is said in Bhagavad Gita that one can never give up work at any time. Therefore, he who works for Krishna and does not enjoy the fruit of results, who offers everything to Krishna, is actually a renouncer.
11.
There are many members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness who work very hard in their office or in the factory or some other place, and whatever they earn, they give to the society. Such highly elevated souls are actually sannyasis and are situated in the renounced order of life. It is clearly outlined here how to renounce the fruits of work and for what purpose fruits should be renounced. So here, Prabhupada is calling devotees who may be working in a factory or in an office, but because they give all their money, that is, they keep something, right? But they're living a minimalist life. But they give everything above that minimum to Krishna. They're actually sannyasis. Because there are two major subjects of the Bhagavad Gita. One is called sannyas, and the other is called tyaga. So, sannyas, as Prabhupada defines it in the first verse of the 18th chapter. Yeah, he says the first verse. The sannyasi, second verse says, giving up all activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyas. And giving up the results of all activities is what the wise call renunciation or tyaga. So these are the two subjects of Bhagavad Gita. Right? And that's the first verse that says that. So let's look at the first verse. It says, I mean, we went over this before, but it's good to go over it a second time. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, Krishna, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyasa, O killer of the Kasi demon, master of senses. Purport. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita is finished in 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses the devotional service, that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of God is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. So it goes on and on, but where does it say this? Anyway, let me read the rest of it. And it says, in the first 6 chapters, stress was given to devotional service, yoginam apisarvasam. Of all the yogis or transcendentalists, one who always thinks of me within himself is best. In the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. In the third 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation, and the activities of material nature and transcendental nature and devotional service were described. It was concluded that all acts should be performed in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, represented by the words Om Tat Sat, which indicate Vishnu, the Supreme Person. The third part of Bhagavad Gita has shown that devotional service and nothing else is the ultimate purpose of life. This has been established by citing past acharyas in the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra. Certain impersonalists consider themselves to have a monopoly on the knowledge of Vedanta Sutra, but actually the Vedanta Sutra is meant for understanding devotional service and for the Lord Himself. For the Lord Himself is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra, and He is its knower. This is described in the 15th chapter. In every scripture, every Veda, devotional service is the objective. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. As in the 2nd chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described. In the 18th chapter, also a summary of all instructions given. The purpose of life is indicated to be renunciation and attainment of the transcendental position above the three modes of nature. Arjuna wants to clarify the two distinct subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, namely Tyaga and the renounced order of life, namely renunciation, Tyaga, and the renounced order of life, Sannyasa. So there it is. These are the two main subjects of the Bhagavad Gita, is renunciation and Tyaga. So renunciation is sannyas, where you give up all materially motivated activities, and Tyaga is when you give everything to the Lord. Thus, he is asking the meaning of these two words. Okay, so now we go back. Are there any questions about that? No, then we go back to the original point, and that is this amazing statement that Prabhupada makes, where he says, the individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the Supreme Consciousness, thus maintain its conscious purity. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the Supreme. So then it says, this consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Well, the proportion of purity, that's what Krishna is talking about. This renunciation and this what is actually sannyas and what is actually tyaga or sacrifice, right? So one is purified by this, giving up all materially motive activities, which means you engage only in spiritually motivated activities. And then the proof of it is you actually give the result completely to the Lord. Now, you can't do it completely now because you might be a grihasta, but you begin to give as a grihasta because that is the dharma of a grihasta. There are four orders, right? The varnas. There's the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, and the sudras. So three of those orders, brahmanas, and in the four spiritual orders, there's brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha, and sannyas. The three of those orders don't do work. The brahmachari, the vanaprastha, and sannyasi doesn't work. The only ones that work are the grihastas. So they have to support the sannyasis, the vanaprasthis, and the brahmacharis. Otherwise, how can they dedicate all their time to self-purification and preaching? It's not possible. So the grihastas have to work, and they have to be charitable. Otherwise, the whole system would collapse.
So, when grihastas have to focus on the tyaga, which,
Yes.
which eventually leads all other ashramas or sannyas, because they should only be doing activities that are.
Well, they're all sannyasis if they all follow what their duty is. Even the grihasta is a sannyasi, right? We just read that. If he follows what is the dharma of the brahmachari? He has to be completely surrendered, not making any money, not engaging in any illicit sex. He has to follow four regulative principles and give everything to the guru, right?
Study the scriptures of the Guru.
Exactly. And that's up to 25 years, right? And if they want to get married, they can. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Huh?
Or they can remain as brahmacharis.
Or they can remain as brahmacharis. Right? So then what is the dharma of the grahastha? He has to work. He has to maintain his family, and he also has to maintain the other three orders as much as he can, depending on his work, right? And then there's the vanaprastha. Well, he's renounced, right? He has to go on pilgrimage. He and his wife together go on pilgrimages, and they give up their attachment to home and hearth. Their children are already grown and situated, and they perform austerities together. And then if the wife agrees and the husband feels he can now become completely dedicated to preaching and not staying in one place, that's another thing. You can only stay. Actually, Narada Muni was cursed that he cannot stay more than 3 days in one place. So he's always traveling all over the place preaching. So that should be the life of a sannyasi. He should be always traveling and preaching. Right?
Then he hands over the wife to son's responsibility and
Yeah, or the wife can live in a holy place where she can be maintained, like Vrindavan or some other place. So that's why there's so many very poor Bengali women that walk all the way from or take a bus all the way from Bengal to Vrindavan so that they can pass their last stage of life in Vrindavan, right? And therefore, you should always help those ladies. They're always begging in the streets, usually. And you should never deny giving them some money, right? Because they've come there to
how do you know Maharaj who they are?
You'll see them.
Oh.
You'll see them. They're not dressed very opulently in any way, and they're. I don't know if they're begging as much now as before because some of the temples take care of them now, But when I first went there, there were a lot of them begging, and I thought they were just normal beggars. But then I realized that they weren't. They were very saintly women who husband has died or who were thrown out of the house by their sons, or and they if they have to, they just walk to Vrindavan, and they stay in Vrindavan and they beg, and eventually they're going to die there, and they're chanting all the time. They're very, very saintly women. Yeah. So I remember one time my wife and I walked into the Radha Damodar temple. In the Radha Damodar temple, they have all these, floor marble with names on them, right? Just like that's how I got the idea to put the names in there. Well, this one lady came up to me, and myself and my wife, and held my hand like this and started singing, the bhajan. I'll think of it in a second. And she was smiling and singing, and really, it was very, very touching, And I think I gave her some money, and she didn't want it. She didn't want it. She was just happy to see us walk into the temple, white people, and she knew that we must be very fortunate to be able to be there. And Tandira Charanasi Bhakta Sanivas Janami Janami He Apila. She sang that. My only desire is to always be in association with devotees, right? So it's very, very nice. So many of those ladies are elevated souls, but they're dressed very simply, and they've come there to die, but be in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so it says here the consciousness is divided into 3 modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. So Adi Atmika is self-identification with the body and mind. That is material life, right? Adibodhika is self-identification with the material products. That's also material life, right? But Adidaivaka, or self-identification as a servant of the Lord, that is the beginning of purity of consciousness. So the first two are contaminated. The third is the beginning of purification, right? That's why there's a statement by Prabhupada that says, in the absence of Krishna consciousness, impersonalism may be helpful. Impersonalism may be helpful. And also, he says, worship of demigods is not completely condemned in the sense that at least you're worshiping someone, you're recognizing there's someone superior to you.
So Adi Daivaka is either demigod worship or the Brahman.
You could say that, because it's the beginning of spiritual life. See, now, if you become a Buddhist, that's not the beginning, because the Buddhists don't believe in the soul or in God. But the Mayavadis at least to have some concept of God. See, so Sankaracharya upped the spiritual practices from Buddhism to Mayavadism. So he upped it to the stage of spirituality. He reestablished the authority of the Vedas, but he gave a Buddhist interpretation of the Vedas, so the Buddhists would accept it. Buddhists were running India for 1,000 years, right? But Buddha also predicted it. His thing would only 1,000 years. Of course, how people are. They're continuing it. Right?
It's false Buddhism.
Huh?
False Buddhism.
False. Yeah, they're not actually Buddhists. They're not actually following. Huh?
Buddha came to stop eating meat, and they're eating meat and following Buddhism.
Yeah, not all of them, but
quite a few.
Well, Dalai Lama eats meat, and he's one of the biggest leaders of the
He
Buddhists.
said, my doctor asked me to eat, I'm eating.
What?
My doctor asked me to eat, I'm eating.
Yeah. Oh, is that what he said? Yeah. Okay, so this statement that Prabhupada makes is a huge statement according to self-identification, according to the level of purity, right? So you can see how Krishna consciousness is progressive. It is not regressive. It's definitely progressive. And you progress right up to the point where you give everything to Krishna, like Bali Maharaj. Now, you can't do it overnight. We're not saying today you have to start doing that, right? But you have to start by giving what you can, right? And understand that it is the goal, that eventually you will be a real sannyasi and a real tyagi. And that's the real two main subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita. That's it. All right, we'll stop right there. See, we just analyzed today one sentence of the purport, right? But look what it led to, like a huge amount of information. That's how powerful Prabhupada's writing is. And it's all simple English. There's no strange words, right? Haribol. All right.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagata Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Mandamoyi Savadana Mate Jahara
प्रसादे ये भवतोरिया कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जाते कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो गुरु मुख पद्म वाक्या चिते ते कोरिया जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा आशा जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा आशा ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से 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 दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ हो जय विद्या विनाश जाते भक्ति जहाँ हो जय विद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ हो जय विद्या विनाश जाते भक्ति जहाँ हो जय विद्या विनाश जाते वेद गाय जहाँ राजा दो करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनर बंधु गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनर बंधु गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदमा जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोके राजीवाना प्रभु गुरु दया देह मोरे पाद छाया प्रभु गुरु दया देह मोरे पाद छाया जास दुस त्रिभुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo.
Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagacha Statara Satarashi Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Prantakoti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikahosh Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvait Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Haribo, Devi, Gauravani Pracharya, Nirisesh, Paskatyat Desatani, Gaura Premanandi, Haribo. Our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection, fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter in your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya. So I see that no kids are coming to the class, either Saturday or Sunday. It's very interesting. So, but anyway, there's homework for the kids, and it is to look up the article in the news called "A Single Devastating California Fire Season Wiped Out Years of Efforts to Cut Emissions." Now, because climate so-called change is such an important thing, they teach it in school now, right? So this is the truth. This show that the whole thing is a hoax. It's a bunch of nonsense. So this article explains how one season of fires in 2020 in California wiped out 20 years, almost 20 years of all the climate, what do you call those?
Efforts to control emission gases.
Yeah, climate efforts by Californians to cut their emissions of planet warming, carbon dioxide, was erased by one season of fires in California. And in that one season of fires in California, it eclipsed by 2 times all the carbon dioxide emission saving California did, the whole state of California did. In other words, the whole thing is nonsense. They don't count the effect of nature on the environment, right? Because if they did, you would see that by changing to electric cars, that would only be a negligible part of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. The main part of carbon dioxide going to the atmosphere is hurricanes, earthquakes, and especially volcanoes, right, and fires, right? That's what's causing the emissions problem, you know, and that is completely recycled through the carbon cycle. So the whole thing is a hoax. They just want to make
Elon Musk rich.
huh?
They want to make Elon Musk rich.
What's that?
Elon Musk rich.
Oh, yeah, Elon, not Elon.
Elon Musk rich.
Yeah, I call him Elon Mustard.
Mustard rich.
Elon Mustard, Bustard, you know. So you see, now the kids' homework is to read this article. A single devastating California fire season wiped out years of efforts to cut emissions. And they have to read this and then explain what is the main thing that the politicians are trying to do. Basically, it's stop all petroleum-run machinery, including cars and factories and everything. And what they're going to do basically is put, it's actually a good thing. So if they eliminate all that, then we would have to go back to self-sufficient living, because they're not going to be able to make enough electricity with wind power and air power, whatever, water power, whatever. The whole industrial thing will collapse. So maybe that's a good thing, you know.
I think more than kids, I think parents should write essay.
Parents are not interested. They don't even come to the class, probably. Yeah. So okay. So that's their homework. So tell your kids what the homework is. A single devastating California fire season wiped out years of efforts to cut emissions. So they have to read this, relate it and show the ridiculousness of especially the state of California with all their what is it emissions control and all that nonsense. One season of fire wiped it out and doubled it, right? So then they have to talk about, and then they have to do research and see what Prabhupada says about pacification of nature, and that is in the 14th mantra of the Ishopanishad. Yeah. Okay, Haribol.
It's a very nice exercise.
You can learn a lot. You can learn how much you're being cheated by the.
Many people, Maharaj, they are buying Tesla to support environment.
Yeah.
I know few friends.
Actually, that's not true.
No, they gave this reason.
The people are buying because they want to buy toys.
There's some friends they gave this reason.
No, they say they want to help the environment.
That is the excuse they give.
No, true. That's exactly both ways.
If they really want them, then they should be walking.
Yeah, if they want to give up emissions, they should walk, right? Or have a horse, right? Or a cow.
Bullock.
A bull, yeah. Cycle,
We
yeah.
always need some excuse to say that. That's
14th verse of use. That's what
Huh?
Isophacial 14th.
14th verse.
You see it?
14th mantra.
It says pacification in nature. It's one of the paragraphs, I think. Do you see it?
Just took the homework.
Okay, all right, yeah. Let me double check where that pacification statement comes in by Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
And I'll look at my
Krishna Krishna.
my Ishopanishad.